Friends, today I am continuing the series of lectures on pain, the physiology of pain management. Especially I will consider the physiological principles involved in the pain management. Special reference will be given to the gate control mechanism. On the right hand side, a figure taken from Melzack and Wall's original publication in Science, describing 16 different surgical procedures that can alleviate pain. It is a continuation of the Melzack and Wall's figure. The point number 1 is the gyrectomy. The postparietal gyrus is ablated. That is the sensory cortex S1. So then separate the prefrontal lobe from the rest of the brain, the prefrontal lobotomy, to relieve the pain. Then sever the connections from thalamus to the cortex. That means the ventroposterolateral nucleus of the thalamus or the thalamic areas, they are severed or removed or ablated. Then tractotomy at the mesencephalic level, that midbrain level. The tractotomy is done at 2 levels, one at the medulla or midbrain level, or at the thoracervical level, or at the thoracic level, depending upon the situation, what we want to preserve. The mesencephalic level, the lateral spinal thalamic tract course is ablated or dissected or severed. Then pituitary separation, hypophysectomy. Fifth nerve rhizotomy, that means cutting the fifth, in case of trigeminal neuralgia, fifth nerve root is severed where it enters to the nucleus. Similarly, ninth nerve neurectomy. The medullary tractotomy, I have already mentioned, the lateral spinothalamic tract in the medulla is severed. Trigeminal tractotomy, that means the trigeminal nerve coming or the tract from the trigeminal nerve is severed. Cervical chordotomy, in this condition the tract in the cervical cord is severed, that means the lateral spinothalamic tract is severed. Same thing at the thoracic level, thoracic chordotomy. Sympathectomy was practiced for relieving a pain associated with the intermittent claudication arising from thromboangiitis obliterans or the Purchas disease. Myelotomy, that means the point of crossing is severed, that is the midline sectioning, so that the pain fibers do not cross the opposite side and they will not go they will not ascend into the lateral spinothalamic tract. Leger's tractotomy, Leger's tract is severed because Leger's tract is trying to give inputs to the pain fibers, especially through the substantia gelatinosa cells and other things. They are severed in layer lamina 192. Posterior rhizotomy, the posterior root sectioning. The neurectomy, the nerve fiber which is carrying these pain sensation is cut. These are all the methods, these are all the surgical methods which are practiced in terminal illnesses or the illnesses in which the patient is having intractable pain, especially the malignancy or other disorders. Pain is defined as an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage or injury. This definition, which has been given by the International Association for the Study of Pain, has been recently changed. The change is made only that unpleasant is removed and distressing is added. So thus now it is defined as pain is a distressing sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage. Now we revise the pain pathway briefly. Starts from the primary nociceptors, carried by thinly myelinated A delta fibers and unmyelinated C fibers, relay in lamina 195 and lamina 192 respectively for these fibers. The layer 5 neurons are known as a wide dynamic range neurons, are also known as a target neurons. They give axons for the lateral spinothalamic tract. The axons of these neurons cross to the opposite side and ascend as lateral spinothalamic tract and reach the ventero-posterior lateral nucleus of thalamus. On the way to thalamus, they relay in the medulla, rostroventral part of the medulla that gives the collateral there, and they relay in the parabrachial nucleus in the ponto-midbrain junction and also relay in the periaqueductal gray. The fibers from the ventero-posterolateral nucleus of thalamus project to somatosensory cortex S1, this portion, and then that is the area 312 of the parietal cortex. Subsequently, it will reach to S2 and the cortical sensory association areas. Collaterals given in the rostroventral medulla on the way of the lateral spinothalamic tract, they would give a feedback inhibitory signals to the substantia gelatinosa cells to inhibit the pain transmission. This is the component. And at the same time, they form the ascending reticular activating system, and the fibers from the ascending reticular system, they reach the thalamus, the intralaminar nucleus, and from there it will project on to the entire mantle of the cerebral cortex to produce arousal response. In case of relays at periaqueductal gray, they also participate in the reticular ascending system as a part of the reticular system, which is starting from the rostroventral medulla for the arousal response. In addition, the periaqueductal gray also sends inhibitory signals to the substantia gelatinosa cells indirectly via the medullary components present in the rostroventral medulla. In addition, the periaqueductal gray is in reciprocal connection with the cingulate cortex and the prefrontal cortex, and these two important cortical structures trying to modulate the pro and anti-nociceptive actions, and these actions are mediated through the nuclei situated in the periaqueduct. The relays at parabrachial nucleus have a important function to perform, especially the affective component of the pain is transmitted through this pathway. This would form the paleo-spinothalamic tract, that is emotion or behavior associated with the pain. To achieve that, the parabrachial nucleus connects or sends axons to the amygdala and hypothalamus, amygdala as well as hypothalamus, and from there it relayed into or it projects into the cingulate cortex, the insular cortex, via the dorsomedian nucleus of the thalamus for affective or behavioral responses associated with the pain. In addition, the parabrachial nucleus joins the reticular ascending system, reticular activating system, which ascends through the thalamus to the entire cortical response for arousal response. Considering the pain pathways, now we consider what are the various strategies for the management of pain. One, this could be managed at a local level, at a nerve level, that is a transmission, in the periphery, and then in the spinal cord, in the medulla, in the midbrain, in the thalamus, and in the cortical and limbic areas. In the cortical and limbic areas, especially the somatosensory area, parietal cortex, the cingulate area, or the temporal lobe, that is amygdala, then pituitary and prefrontal cortex. These are the various strategies available to us. Treatment in the management. Usually pain, immediately after pain, there is a rubbing or a sort of a touching so that there is a improved circulation. That would help to move away the chemicals which are accumulated because of the tissue injury or whatever. Similarly, a massage in the sense of just touching the part and trying to feel it, and that would also produce a small gentle massage that would also take away these local chemicals from because of the pressure effect from that side to into the circulation, puts into the circulation. Then counter irritants, they will increase the blood circulation, and the increase in the blood circulation that would produce the flushing of the chemicals accumulated. Cooling, that will reduce the disruptor activity, and that would block that would relieve certain amount of pain. Similarly, injection of a local anesthetics or local anesthetic applications at the local site may also relieve pain at the receptor level. These are all practiced. And giving anti-inflammatory drugs that reduce the swelling and the inflammatory responses or inflammatory mediators, so thus they may help to relieve pain. Options are cooling the nerve so that the impulses are not carried to the spinal cord, or injecting a local anesthetics or sodium channel blockers so that the impulses are not transmitted. Sometimes we may have to do those nerve blocks to perform certain surgeries, say for example tooth extraction or any of those things. Or in case of an intractable pain, the neurectomy is also done. In the spinal cord, there are spinal anesthesia, epidural anesthesia, or subdural anesthesia. As you try to understand, they are utilizing different planes in the spinal cord, different areas or different layers of the spinal coverings. They will block the pain, especially the epidural may be blocking only the transmission of impulses to the spinal cord, or in the subdural or whatever spinal anesthesia wherein it will block all the information reaching up above. The use of opiates and adrenergic alpha-2 receptor antagonist also relieves pain in the spinal cord. These opiates, because in the spinal cord there are enkephalininergic nerves, and these enkephalin nerves are inhibitory to the central transmission, and they will be very helpful here. And similarly, the alpha-2 receptor antagonists, they block the pain, whereas the alpha-1 would enhance the pain. Acupuncture and acupressure also relieves the pain. These are some of the strategies. The counter irritants, similar to acupuncture and acupressure, or nerve stimulation, same principle, that would relieve the pain. Dorsal rhizotomy, that means a dorsal root sectioning, so that would relieve the pain, especially in case of the intractable pain of the terminal illnesses, to help the patient and to provide him the better quality of life. Chordotomy, that means a particular, say for example, you cut the lateral spinothalamic tract on the opposite side and relieve the pain on the contralateral side. Sympathectomy is practiced for the thromboangiitis obliterans or any sympathetically mediated responses, the painful responses, the vascular or the visceral pain. The myelotomy, that means a midline sectioning, so that the crossing of the fibers is severed. So that means you have to select the segment of the myelotomy. Then Leisler's tractotomy, that means above the level of the lesion or at the level of the lesion, you cut the Leisler's tract so that the pain is relieved. So these are some of the strategies for the spinal cord. This is one of the classic picture given by Meljack and Wall, wherein in this paper they mentioned about the gate. That means the gating of the impulses reaching from the transmitter neuron, or what is called a wide range dynamic neurons, that will be blocked. Here you have a plan, so that means there is a small diameter fibers. The small diameter fibers, when they are activated, they carry the pain. They will activate the transmission of pain on one side, and now they would inhibit the substantia gelatinosa cells, which in turn presynaptically inhibit so that means inhibition of the inhibition, that means the gate is not closed, that remain open, that means that there is a continuous flow of pain or a nociceptive information through the T cells. This is happening with the small diameter fibers. On the other hand, the large diameter fibers, especially those carrying the touch sensation, and when they are activated, as happens in case of a massage and other things, they would initially excite, but they would excite the T cells as well as they would excite the substantia gelatinosa cells. The substantia gelatinosa cells in turn inhibit the transmission further. That means presynaptically that inhibits the transmission on both sides, the large diameter fibers as well as the small diameter fibers. This forms the basis for number of pain relieving applications, especially the nerve stimulation, that means the transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation to relieve pain, wherein you stimulate the large diameter fibers to suppress the pain or inhibit the pain or close the gate. Similarly, the acupuncture, that needle irritating the large diameter fibers, that would again inhibit the transmission of the pain. Counter irritants also work on a similar basis. So this is the basis for a gate control. That means a gate is operated by a group of by a neuron situated in lamina 2, and the gatekeeper here is substantia gelatinosa cell. Now the substantia gelatinosa cell either opens the gate or closes the gate. The opening of the gate is in command with the small diameter fibers. That means gate is not closed. Opening means gate is not closed. Whereas in the large diameter fibers, A beta fibers, they would close the gate, so that the onward transmission of the painful or nociceptive information to the higher ups is prevented. Further, these are the factors that would open or close the gate. So the activity in a small diameter pain transmitting fibers, they open the gate. If the activity is there, you can just see that on one side these are C fibers and E delta fibers, they open the gate. A beta fiber stimulation, close the gate. There are descending inputs from the raphe nucleus, that is serotonergic fibers, they close the gate. They close the gate. Similarly, the information coming from periaqueductal gray, that again comes through the raphe nucleus as well as another nucleus, that is locus ceruleus, that means it secretes both 5-HT and norepinephrine. Besides the medulla and midbrain descending influences, there are other influences coming from the limbic cortex or the prefrontal cortex, wherein our positive and negative emotions determine whether to open the gate or to close the gate. Say for example, a player in a tournament may get hurt, but he will not feel the pain while he is playing. At the end of the play, he comes to the room and then he starts feeling pain. So that is a typical of a suppression of the pain, because there is a positive emotion. Positive emotion is to win the tournament. So that type of a behavior, positive emotions, that is all positive emotions, they suppress or close the pain. The negative emotions such as worrying, anxiety, and always focused about pain, they open the gate and they continue to give the pain. Let us consider the excitatory and inhibitory inputs to the gate. The main gate is located here in the T cells, the transmitter cells, are projecting neuron. The pain fibers, the A delta and C fibers, they excite these projecting neurons and the pain is perceived. And when these fibers are going, they will inhibit the substantia gelatinosa cells so that a gate is not closed, gate remain open. Here these cells will have a GABAergic interneuron there, so you have a GABAergic interneuron which would inhibit. So now the inhibitory signal or its a minus sign should be there with a GABA that inhibits the substantia gelatinosa cell and which is inhibitory. Other sensory inputs from touch, pressure, proprioception coming from the A beta fibers, large diameter myelinated fibers, they would excite the substantia gelatinosa cells. Their primary function is not nociception. They are carrying the touch and other sensory modalities. They excite the substantia gelatinosa cells, which in turn inhibit the pain transmitting pathway, that is A delta and C fibers, that in turn reduce the transmission. The norepinephrine and serotonin coming from the descending medullary pathways or projections, they would activate the substantia gelatinosa cells. Whether they would activate here the substantia gelatinosa cells or here in the presynaptic end, those projections has to be looked into carefully. The inputs coming from the higher centers via the periaqueductal gray and hypothalamic, the positive emotions stimulate, that means in turn suppress the pain. Negative emotions inhibit, in turn open the gate, the pain perception continues. Now in the gate here, the main transmitter is enkephalin, and this enkephalin mediates its action through the opiate receptors. These receptors are mu and delta opiate receptors. Now these A delta fibers and C fibers, A delta fibers primarily release glutamate at the terminal and the C fibers release substance P as a transmitter. Now the low threshold stimulation whenever we are doing, that would probably involve the glutamate, that would be suppressed with the mu opiate receptors. High threshold stimulation for relieving pain involve delta opiate receptors, and I have same thing is picturized here with the Melzack-Wall model of the gate. To enumerate, what are the conditions that open the gate? One, the physical condition, that means the extent of injury. If the extent of injury is severe and vast, then there will be always irritation and injury that would make the pain to go further, and it will continue to produce the pain. And if the activity level, that means you are doing it and you are again, that will say for example you have torn the soft tissue injury and you are producing the activity that would further damage the tissue, and that again produce that means the physical, sometimes you may be requiring a rest. Your orthopedic surgeons, they try to take the body part a rest. That is one aspect of the opening of the pain or the opening of the gate. The emotional states such as anxiety, worry, tension, depression, all these things open the gate, so that it's coming through the higher centers. That higher centers, they will inhibit the substantia gelatinosa cells so that they get kept open. Similarly, the mental condition, you are worrying and focused on the pain, or you are in the middle of the night, you wake up and you start feeling about it, and a loneliness or a boredom, all these things they will add up. That is a limbic component. They will add up about the painful situation, and you start worrying what happened to you and how you can get away with that. First is physical conditions in which there is a treatment. Treatment in the spinal cord, either with the alpha-2 adrenoreceptor antagonist, or with opiates, or with the glutamate receptor antagonist. So that would block the, or that will block the transmission. The second is massage. Massage will excite the large diameter touch sensitive fibers carried by A beta. They would be activated, and they would activate the substantia gelatinosa cells to inhibit the target neuron, which is reaching in the spinothalamic tract. Or if there is a counter stimulation, either by stimulation or by acupuncture or acupressure, that would again be exciting the large diameter fibers. In case of emotional state, the positive emotions block the pain. Positive emotions descend down from the reticular system and from the descending projections coming from the hypothalamo or the limbic systems. They would activate the raphe nucleus or locus ceruleus, in turn would produce the activation of substantia gelatinosa cells. In addition, they directly project onto the substantia gelatinosa cells and then activate to suppress the target cell transmission. Another interesting aspect in the emotions, the stress. Stress is associated with the release of corticotropin. The corticotropin is released as a pre-opiomelanocortin, a precursor substance containing beta endorphin, melanocyte stimulating hormone, and corticotropin. So during stress, this molecule is released. The beta endorphins or endogenous opiate substances thus produces analgesia. This is known as stress-induced analgesia. One might have noticed this type of situation when we are trying to perform certain actions or taking up the examination. During that time, the stress level is high, you will be less sensitive. But after the examination, suddenly you start feeling the pain. Another interesting aspect, when you are in a relaxed mood, there is that would activate and that would reduce the pain. And the resting position, that would also reduce the pain. And when you are performing something and you achieve a particular goal, and that achievement feeling of emotion would be overcoming the painful considerations from the descending projections. So though there is a pain, or neither it is not perceived, or even if it is perceived, maybe it is ignored. In case of a mental condition, when you are diverted with some other attention, your pain may be slightly diminished, or it will be diminished. Or when you are preoccupied with a certain level of work or certain other works, so that would be occupied and you will not be able to sense the pain. Now, just trying to summarize the descending projections that regulate gate control theory, you can just see there on the other side you have the periaqueductal gray, wherein you have a periventricular area wherein large amount of enkephalines are released when you are stimulating it, or then that also whenever the pain is ascending up, that would be this thing, they are all encephalinergic nerves. Similarly, the raphenucleus and locus coeruleus in the medulla, they would send back the feedback inhibition to the substantia gelatinous cells as shown there. They release, they activate the substantia gelatinous cells to release the enkephalines, and that will prevent the further pain transmission. In addition to these, I have listed here prefrontal cortex, cingulate cortex, the limbic system, hypothalamus, periaqueductal and raphenucleus. So these are all the projections that regulate the gate control. So I have made extensive, there is some repetition, but I am giving at each level the strategies for pain treatment from the medulla and midbrain. In the medulla, the activation of the medullary stimulation that would activate a serotonergic bulbospinal pathway that is coming from the raphenucleus, or the catecholaminergic pathway coming from the locus coeruleus. They are activated, they will suppress the pain by closing the gate. At the same time, the periaqueductal stimulation, or the stimulation of the midbrain, that would activate these pathways. That means we have the periaqueductal gray, and this pathway is projecting onto the raphenucleus here and the locus coeruleus here, and that in turn suppress the pain. That is via the F5HT and norepinephrine. At the same time, the periaqueductal gray matter releases enkephalines that would suppress, because of the large amount of enkephalines, that will suppress the reticular activating system that carries the pain inputs into the thalamus, the non-specific nuclei, the thalamus. That would reduce the pain that is ascending, that is a transmission further. The enkephalines released into this, they will be released into the ventricles, and there are periventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus, and these periventricular nuclei will also suppress the pain or pain related responses. The periaqueductal grace stimulation also activates the anti-nociceptive actions that project onto the substantia gelatinous cells, and that would reduce the pain. And this anti-nociceptive actions they receive from the cingulate and the prefrontal cortex. That is how the periaqueductal stimulation relieves pain. So there are at least four paths in which it achieves. Similarly, the tractotomy, the lateral spinothalamic tract, either at the medulla or at the midbrain, the mesenchyme, one can perform, and then they may reduce the pain. There are other possible or experimental pain management strategies. These are all being practiced sometime or the other, but they are difficult procedures, and sometimes they may not be. They will be coming up with other morbidity or other situations. Just like that, you just come here, amygdalectomy. Amygdala is a group of nucleus, part of the limbic system, and that covers number of emotions. And if you remove that, the total animal becomes mild and non-reactive and not able to perform the normal functions. So that is one aspect. So that means you become dormant or benign. Similarly, hypophysectomy. Hypophysectomy, if you remove pituitary, so that means the pituitary is concerned with a number of hormonal actions, endocrine actions. Those endocrine actions are hampered, and that would be more damaging or more severe than the pain itself. So to preserve the endocrine component, one has to do the hypophysectomy, if at all. So that would also reduce the pain, but usually it is not practiced. So then there is a thalamic level. A thalamotomy, especially the specific thalamotomy, that means by laser or cautery, they destroy the particular nucleus. That would just which is transmitting the pain is diminished. So that means you can do the thalamotomy, especially the VPL nucleus or the intralaminar nucleus or dorsomedial nucleus. So that will also relieve the pain, but again, thalamus being a very small area, and you have to be very selective. Similarly, cauterization of the intralaminar nucleus, which is carrying the arousal response or the other responses that can be blocked by doing the cauterization or thalamotomy. Cortical ablation, practically it may abolish the pain for some time, but it will not totally abolish, because the affective component of the pain is not abolished. The parietal cortex is only the discriminative pain is lost, but the non-discriminative component, the affective component or the behavioral component of the pain is not altered. So that is why that is not a great idea. At the same time, that would also produce the sensory loss of the other sensory modalities. In case of cingulate cortex ablation, again you will lose a number of emotions, and that may not be as advisable or as acceptable. Once the prefrontal lobotomy was practiced to relieve pain, but practically the prefrontal lobotomy does not relieve pain. It would relieve the person from the effects of pain. So that means it does not bother him. So the pain is there, and he says that yes, pain is there, but he is not bothered about it. So that type of situation in case of a prefrontal lobotomy. Just I covered all the aspects about the pain. I have given extensively on the gate control theory, and now In the next class, I will talk about the functional organization of the cerebral cortex. Thank you very much. Leave your comments and suggestions. The following are the books I have referred. One, Principles of Neuroscience by Kendall, Guidance Textbook of Physiology, Genong's Review of Medical Physiology, the articles from Besabam, published in Cell, and the article from M. et al. Appeared in International Journal of Molecular Science, and also the article from Beljac and Wall, which appeared in Science.